Want to move on to Astros. Last year, we expect the Astros every year. They were the pick. They were my pick once you got into it. Didn't end up
Hmm.
working out a year ago. Lost to the Rangers, who ended up winning the World Series. Your take on being around the Astros on a daily basis. I look at that offense, and I talk about the last 5 or 6 years because there were a few teams that I was on where I consider the offense to be very astute, where you see guys talking to each other all the time, and they're sharing information about this pitcher and that. It's
Right.
just high level hitting, and I love to watch that. That's what really, even to this day, you want to talk the mental side of hitting and how to prepare and looking for tells for pitchers. That's right up my alley. I can talk all day about it.
Hmm.
I've watched this team for years now. They seem to be that high intellect. When Bregman and Altuve and when Correa was there, it's like they're all sharing information. They all have an idea of what they're
Sure.
doing, and it's a really good team. Now you throw in an Alvarez and a Tucker, two studs to that. Talk a little bit about their run last year, coming up short.
Yeah.
I know you're starting this season off with your big guy Verlander. He's going to be on the IL to start the season.
Right.
You talked about Valdez having to maybe make an adjustment to that pitch
Hmm.
count. How do you look the opening? How do you look at the last year's disappointment,
Yeah.
the opening of 2024?
So they got to be the team to beat again in the West, even though they did. Well, they did win the West last year. They tied the Rangers, but the Astros had the tiebreaker. Um, so I think that, I talked about the Yankees 97 going into 98, getting knocked out by the Indians, and then that offseason, how things just weren't right. That you just did not have a settled feeling about how the season went. And that carried over into 98, 99, 2000. I think you talk to the players this spring, they have that same feeling that they felt like they left something on the table. It wasn't a great season they had. They had their ups and downs. This is a team that is a very, very good offensive team, especially on the road. For some reason, over this run that they've had over the last 8 years or so, they've been better road team than they have been home team. Um, can't really put your finger on it, or you try and fix it. But then they're continue to try and fix it. But I think that's what they feel right now is that the sound that we've heard from spring training. Everybody's having a good spring training. It's been a quiet spring training for the Astros, but there's still just that stuck in your craw a little bit, just something little there that we didn't finish what we should have finished last year. It's been an incredible run. Actually, they coined it last year. The Astros did that. This is the golden age of Astros baseball. And it absolutely is. I mean, they've had good teams in the past. You go back to the late 90s, early 2000s. We had the Killer Bees and guys like that. Nothing like what they've had now. And it's truly remarkable. What another similarity between this team offensively, the Astros and the Yankees, what did the Yankees do back in the day? They didn't really beat up starting pitching. They beat up relievers, and it wasn't usually back end relievers. It was that 10th, 11th guy on the staff because they would knock the starting pitcher out after 5 innings. Then you have those extra outs that we started off talking about. They weren't a high strikeout team. They were a high walk, high on base percentage team. That's what this Astros team is. In this day and age where strikeouts are just another out, that we have MVPs striking out 200 times.
Yeah.
This is not, and it hasn't been a high strikeout team. This is a team that knows their strike zone, especially guys like Bregman, Altuve. But I'm sorry, not Altuve. Altuve swings at everything. But Bregman, Yordan Alvarez, Tucker, Michael Brantley retired, but when he was it, these guys know their strike zone tremendously well. If Bregman comes back and says that ball, even if it's called a strike, that ball's an inch off the plate, the ball was an inch off the plate.
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable. And that just puts that much more pressure. If you're not going to swing out of the zone, I'm only going to swing in the zone. That's that much more pressure on the pitching staff because a lot of times your swing and misses aren't at strikes.
And I do. I think that this Astros team offensively is the most astute offense in all the game. Now, you can argue, talent levels. I mean, you can go over to the
Sure.
Dodgers. The Dodgers say, "Wait a minute, we got Ohtani, Betts, and Freddie Freeman.
Right.
Okay, well, I can argue with you about talent back and forth, but I'm talking about just intellect, astuteness. I've
And as
always
a
thought this
whole, a
as
lineup
a
as a
whole.
whole, their approach has
They're
always
smart.
been
They're
make
smart.
the pitchers throw strikes. As simple as that seems, if you're not going to offer as a pitcher, if you're not going to offer out of the zone, man, my options are limited, especially with the way, again, we'll go back to how we started the podcast with the way pitchers don't throw strikes now. I mean, now all of a sudden you only have to get a few hits to score runs because you're going to have 5 or 6 walks to go with it.
Hader comes over from the Padres, had another, 1 point something ERA
Crazy.
a year ago. Presley's got a now he's not gonna be the
He's not going to be the
closer.
full-time closer.
Right. I would assume they're gonna do a little ham and egging out in that bullpen.
Astros are extremely conservative with their players all the way around. Bregman played 162 last year or 161 last year.
Right.
He won't do that again, and nobody else probably played over 150 games. Everybody now they have a lot more off days than we do. They have actually 10 more off days than when you and I were playing. But even with those off days, they're going to get additional off days. These guys are going to play 150 games, so there's going to be other off days, and the relievers are the same. They're not going to go. They don't like to go 2 days in a row. They'll do it, but they don't want their relievers absolutely are not going to go 3 days in a row. So there's going to be saves out there. Hader's not going to have every save. Presley's going to get some saves. Brian Abreu will get some saves. There's going to be other times because they kind of have the same approach that the Braves did when you were talking about the Braves and we win every year. My Yankees, when we were doing our thing in the late 90s and early 2000s, we're looking at October. We're looking at September and October. I want our dudes on the mound, ready to go, healthy, sharp then. And that's all that's going on with Verlander. I didn't touch on that earlier. There's no injury with Verlander. They're just going slow. The dude's 40 plus years old.
Yeah.
They're not looking at 30, 32 starts out of him. If they can get 25 starts out of him, they're going to be, and he's healthy at the end of the year, then that's success.
Maldonado moves on. Young kid Diaz takes over. How does that affect it? Is there any effect there from what you've seen from him?
Well, last year was, and even Martin knew that this was, he was mentoring Yainer Diaz, and Yainer Diaz is a very talented player. Offensively, he's legit. He made some big strides last year. Now we'll have to wait and see. I mean, it's a little bit of an unknown, but I think with all the work that he did with Maldonado, with the Astros last year, being the backup guy, not catching all that much, that was all time him just learning how the Astros attack, the pitchers. This is a very good pitching staff again, but a very diverse pitching staff. You got guys throw a whole lot of different stuff. And, we know that the Astros are one of the most analytically driven teams in Major League Baseball. So there's a lot of information that has to be gone through and decide how you're going to use it. So that's what last year was about. I suspect he's going to be just fine. But we'll have to wait and see. It's just one of those things that you really you can't put your finger on it because it hasn't happened yet.
And the one thing, and then we'll move on from the Astros. Give me an update on McCullers. It's like, what's going on? Is he ever going to pitch again? I have no idea. People forget. You look at the rotation. It's Valdez, Javier, Urquidy, Hunter Brown, and everybody forgets. I said, and it always hits me. I go, wait a minute. Where's McCullers? When's he coming back?
Middle of the season. There's no real hard date. It's unfortunate because this guy has, we saw it years ago with him throwing, 24 breaking balls in a row to finish off the Yankees. He's got one of the best breaking balls, changes speeds with it, changes shapes with it. But the contract that he signed, is he going to pitch again? Well, they're going to give him every opportunity because he still has a long time left on that contract. I think 2 or 3 years after this one. So he's going to get the opportunity, but it's unfortunate because talented young man just has not been able to get on the field and get that arm right to where he can go out there and be a be a successful pitcher. So no real hard date right now. They're just talking about middle of the summer. We'll just have to wait and see.
Move over to Texas. Texas Rangers won the World Series a year ago. No Montgomery coming back. DeGrom's still not back. Scherzer's out, had back injury. He had a back surgery in the offseason.
Yeah.
Evaldi's still at the top of that rotation with Gray. Lost Garver to the Seattle Mariners. What'd you see last year? What do you expect out of them this year?
Great run. I mean, tremendous offensive team last year. I think that's going to be really hard to duplicate. And then they had a couple pitchers that just got on a roll, and Montgomery was one of them. I have a tough time believing they're going to be able to duplicate that. Adolis Garcia has already had some physical issues this spring, so he's been out some. Seager, what an incredible year he had. Should have won the MVP. He was there with Shohei. But just an incredible season again. Gonna be hard to duplicate. So we'll have to wait. So I think they're still going to be a good team. The question's been what the question was last year, and was their pitching. And I think last year they just kind of everything lined up for them, and they ended up playing really well down the stretch in the playoffs because they weren't playing very well coming out of September. I think the team to watch and the team that everyone's concerned about in the American League West is the Seattle Mariners. Mm-hmm. And it's because of the talent they have in their rotation. They got J-Rod, they've got some good offensive players, but they have the ability in their rotation to shut any offense down. And if those guys can figure out and stay healthy and not shoot themselves in the foot in April and May, like they've done the last couple of years, dig themselves big holes, and they have all summer to try and get out of it. They can be a very dangerous team.
I think I look at the Mariners on paper, and I really kind of discarded from that. And I don't mean disrespect, but I don't think the A's are a factor, and I don't think the Angels are a factor either. They haven't done enough this offseason to show me any reason that they can compete with the top three you just mentioned.
Not going to be able to pitch. I mean, that's been something we have talked about for I'm going to say, and I'm not exaggerating, almost a decade. What do the Angels need? Pitching. What do the Angels need? Pitching. And what do? They go get another hitter.
I'll tell you the Mariners rotation. I was just over in Mariner camp a few days ago. That's as good a rotation, I think, as there is in the game.
Sure.
And this Miller and Wu kid that finish out the 4 and the 5 spots. If these guys are what I think they are, just from the eye test on the stuff, they're in for something. Because Castillo, Kirby's really something special. If he wins a Cy Young one day, that's not going to surprise me.
Right.
The only thing is, you look at that offense, and year in and year out, second base has been a hole. Well, they go out and they get a Polanco from Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
They plug that hole. You lose Teoscar Hernandez and you lose Suarez at third base. That's 190 RBIs, but you replace them with some guys that aren't going to strike out 200 times.
Right.
It's going to be interesting to see how these guys come to fruition. But you're right. Mariners are a dangerous team.
If they
they're always
just be, and listen, every team goes into the regular season wanting to get off to a good start. I mean, that's the standard, and it's true. But what you want to make sure you don't do is bury yourself. Play 500 through the first couple months of the season. Now you're going to be fine. Now you're in the race. Yeah, you're in third place. Doesn't matter. Other teams have gotten hot. But if you do at least that, you give yourself a chance. But we've seen them so many times over the last couple of years, be 12, 13, 15 games under 500 by the time you get to the midsummer. And every year they seem to kind of bounce back, and they're at least in the conversation by September. But you burn so much energy just trying to get back to relevancy, which is 500. I mean, everybody's got a run in them. You don't want that run to get back to 500. You want to get that run to get 14, 15 games over 500.
Right. What wins that division? How many games? What's your call?
I think with Oakland having some issues, basically rebuilding, I don't think the Angels are going to have a whole lot of wins. They may be 500. I think that would be a good year for them. With the new schedule, which is you're playing everybody across Major League Baseball,
Right.
including both Central divisions, which there's still a lot of wins in the Central division.
Yep.
I think we're probably talking about 97, 98 wins.
97, and to me, you're talking 97, 98 wins, and that's I'm still on board with the Astros. Astros are still the team to beat.
I
I thought
agree.
they were the team to beat in the postseason last year.
Mhm.
Uh, they got knocked out. Kind of shocked me a little bit, but man, it just seems like this core, it's not going away.
Yeah. And like I said, it's a little different attitude in that camp here in spring training that they felt like they had unfinished business from last year. And the last time I was on a team that happened, the team won three World Series in a row. Now I don't think that, that's a tall order, but could they get back to the World Series here in 2024? I think they very well could.
Without a doubt. Mike Stanton, I appreciate you coming on, taking went a little long, but it was good stuff. Good stuff.
Booney, my pleasure,
I
man.
love it, man.
Anytime. I
Yeah,
this is what I do. I talk baseball.
you heard it. We both think the
My wife
Astros are
is so sick of it.
gonna You heard it here. We both like the Astros to win the division. 97 games. It's a lot of games, but hey, it's been done before. For all you watching the Boone podcast, we're new to YouTube. Appreciate you tuning in. For those of you listening, it was a pleasure, and we'll be here. Until next time, I'm Bret Boone, Mike Stanton. Have a great day.
Adios.